If the Democratic race was a mess before last night's debate, oh, it's a train wreck today. A circular firing squad sinking just about every candidate. But the one who got beat up the most, Mike Bloomberg. Can he possibly bounce back from his debate disaster? I'm Judge Andrew Napolitano in tonight for Kennedy. With just a few days to go until the Nevada caucuses, the presidential wannabes bludgeoned each other over health care, socialism. Do you believe we're debating socialism in 2020? The economy and crime. But the biggest target by far, the billionaire former mayor of New York City.
A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Mayor Bloomberg.
I thought that he shouldn't be hiding behind his TV ads.
He had stop and frisk, throwing close to 5 million young black men up against the wall.
We are sick and tired of billionaires like Mr. Bloomberg seeing huge expansions of their wealth, while 500,000 people sleep out on the street tonight.
Mayor Bloomberg, who thinks he can buy this election.
We have a very few non-disclosure agreements.
How many is
Let me
that?
finish.
How many is that?
Moments ago at a rally in Colorado, President Trump said Bloomberg's performance, in his own opinion, was a disaster.
I don't know if anybody watched last night's debate. It got very big ratings. And you know what? Mini Mike didn't do well last night. I was going to send him a note saying, it's not easy doing what I do, is it? Not easy. It's not easy, Mike. Not easy for any of them.
It's not easy. And the liberal media said it was pretty much a losing night for Bloomberg and all the Democrats.
I thought it was a great night for Bernie Sanders. I thought it was a great night for Donald Trump. I thought it was a terrible night for the Democrats.
They were going after each other way too much.
We are 2 days away from the voting in Nevada, and they attacked a guy who's not on the ballot in Nevada. It was, I thought, tactically really dumb.
Democrats perfecting the circular firing squad.
The man they're all running against, Donald J. Trump, hardly took any fire at all.
Nobody laid a glove on him. They were too busy tearing each other to shreds in an intramural ping pong game.
So who won? Oh, let's ask Mike Bloomberg himself.
The real winner in the debate last night was Donald Trump. Because I worry that we may very well be on the way to nominating somebody who cannot win in November.
And to think the Democrats do it all over again next week in South Carolina. So was the president really the winner in Nevada? And did the Bloomberg bubble pop? Here tonight, Serve America PAC Executive Director and Fox News contributor Marie Harf, and host of Part of the Problem podcast, Dave Smith, and comedian extraordinaire and my grade school classmate and host of AM 90 radio host and deliverer of cannoli when you least expect them, Joe Piscopo. All right, so last night...
That was an intro, Judge.
Yeah, last night I was hosting the show, just like tonight. I was so tired, I went home, I went to bed, so I didn't see any of the debate. When I got up this morning, I looked at the newspapers, I thought Bloomberg had died. I mean, because everybody, the New York Post showed a picture of him in the grave.
With the Band-Aids on?
Yeah.
Well, the reality was worse than that.
How bad was it?
It was the worst debate performance I've ever seen, and I've watched a lot of these debates. It was brutal on every level. It's not just that he took shots from everybody. He was weak while being smug, while having no response to the criticisms that were leveled at him. It was an absolute disaster.
Is he so confident in his ability as a manager that he doesn't care how he does in a debate? Because I don't think, Joe will know this, I don't think he ever debated in the 3 times he was elected mayor of New York.
And he's not known for being a good retail politician when he was mayor of New York. He's not on the ballot in Nevada. He's not on the ballot in South Carolina. He's probably banking on the fact that Super Tuesday voters probably weren't watching the debate. And many Democrats are looking for a moderate alternative to Bernie. That's why Pete's been doing well. That's why Amy's been doing well. And that's why Mayor Bloomberg's been rising in the polls. But last night, when he was unable to answer stop and frisk, the female NDA issues.
Oh boy.
Last night, that was probably the worst debate performance I've ever seen. And Donald Trump was not taken down at all. And Bernie Sanders, who is the front runner, the only person attacking him was Mayor Pete.
So, Joey, You are funnier in your sleep than Bloomberg was last night. Does he have any sense of humor whatsoever?
You know, you're right. I think he played it. You hit the nail on the head. He's looking at it as a manager. Marie, you're absolutely right. He knows only 5 million people watched. It's Super Tuesday's the game. He wasn't going to lower himself. I'm telling you, don't. You're absolutely right, Dave. It was bad because, man, he could have came back and said something. He didn't say anything, but he's smarter than that. He's smarter than that, and I'm telling you, he's got something in his back pocket. Don't discount Mike Bloomberg.
Right, so the clips I saw this morning caused me to agree with what you said. It was just awful. But knowing him, I don't think he gives a damn.
Well, I mean, he didn't seem happy about it. I think he's quite happy to sink another $1 billion into this primary season. But I got to say, even beyond that, his weaknesses are so bad. There is no conceivable way he can rally the left wing of the Democrats.
What do your lefty buddies think of him? Suppose he is the nominee. Are they going to vote for Trump, or are they going to stay home, or are they going to vote for Bloomy?
It's a really good question, Judge. And I think that the problem actually isn't the far left. It's people like, I'm a moderate Democrat, right? I looked at Bloomberg a few weeks ago and thought maybe he's the one, given his work on gun reform and climate issues, maybe he can be the moderate standard bearer. And then I read these comments about women. Then I see how much money he poured into keeping Republican Senator Pat Toomey in office in Pennsylvania only in 2016. How can this man be the standard bearer for the Democratic Party? I'm not the far left, and I'm uncomfortable with him. But I'd vote for him over Trump.
Yeah, okay, well, that's the answer. But will Bernie's lefties vote for him over Trump?
Will they vote for anyone but Bernie? We don't know, and that's a concern.
All right. Well, half the early voting states are behind us already, and we're just in the middle of February. We have the Nevada caucuses in 2 days, where Bernie is currently leading in the polls. And then we have the South Carolina primary a week from now, where Uncle Joe has been ahead, but has recently been sinking like a rock in a pond. After that, it's on to Super Tuesday, where Bloomy has focused most of his millions, soon to be billions. So will any candidates separate themselves from the pack? Marie.
The question around Joe Biden is if he does not win in South Carolina.
Is that it?
Probably.
Is it difficult for you to say that?
It is. I really respect Joe Biden. I wish he would have run in 2016. I think he's a better candidate than Hillary. But there is a small path for him to have a mini comeback. Given how poorly Bloomberg did, if he does well in Nevada and South Carolina, he might do better on Super Tuesday. But Bernie is the lead right now, and that's very nerve-wracking for a lot of Democrats.
Dave, does Uncle Joe still have the support of the vast majority of African Americans in South Carolina, or have they begun to desert him?
Well, the polls seem to indicate that they were open to deserting him. Look, the real problem for Joe Biden is in all of the states, if only 2, but in both of them, he's underperformed his numbers. I think Bernie's going to win Nevada. He's going to win South Carolina. I hear people like you sound exactly like kind of establishment Republicans did in 2016, coming to terms, realizing that this guy is taking over our party.
All your liberal friends in the entertainment community, what do they think of Uncle Joe?
Yeah, you know what? He is. You're absolutely right. He's a nice guy.
And he is a sweetheart in person.
You're the moderate Democrat. You're the one. I said because
You're the one.
What do you mean she's the one?
She's the one. No, but no Democrats aren't moderate anymore. I was a blue dog Democrat, as you know, for many years.
Right.
And then I just more libertarian.
Reagan flipped you.
Yeah, actually, it was Reagan. But I met
wait
Joe
a minute.
Biden.
Nancy whispered something to you, but we won't say that on air.
Nancy read me the Ryan Act. She said, stop doing my husband. But I got to tell you, Joe Biden is a nice guy. There's no way he wins. You're absolutely right, Dave. It's Bernie. I love this. For the radio, you can't make up the material. They're writing the material for us. Brokered convention, Bernie and Michael Bloomberg. I'm telling you, it's going to be spectacular.
Our friends at MSNBC said today, if Bernie's the nominee, Trump wins 49 states. What will the Democratic hierarchy do to prevent Bernie from becoming the nominee?
I don't think they can do anything. And if they try to, they will hurt themselves if he is the nominee. Look,
well, they already took the nomination away from him once when they gave it to Hillary. Am I right?
He's not going down this time.
Joe Biden still polls best against Donald Trump. I actually think Bernie Sanders can beat Donald Trump head-to-head, but I think he would destroy the Democratic Party at the Senate level and the House level. He would really hurt us down ballot.
All right, following up on that, even after 9 debates, Iowa and New Hampshire, we know there is still no clear front runner in the Democratic Party. You ready for this, Marie?
I don't know, man.
If no candidate has clinched at least half the delegates up for grabs, which seems increasingly likely, then the DNC will have a contested convention this summer. Last night, Chuck Todd asked every candidate if the person with the most delegates entering the convention should be guaranteed the nomination, even if they don't have a majority. And guess what? Most of them said no.
Whatever the rules of the Democratic Party are, they should be followed.
No, let the process work its way out.
Not necessarily, not till there's a
Senator
majority.
Klobuchar?
Let the process work.
Of course, Bernie Sanders, who has been surging in the polls and looks likely to have at least a plurality, but not a majority of the delegates, said the will of the people should not be ignored.
I think that the will of the people should prevail, yes.
Thank you, guys.
The most votes should become the nominee.
5 no's and a yes.
So Judge Napolitano, you're still employed by Fox News after that performance? All right. So
he's great.
If Bernie does have the lead, but not enough delegates to clinch the nomination, will all hell break loose in Milwaukee? And will the elites, what they used to call the super delegates, ruin the Democratic Party again, Marie?
I'm not sure that they will be able to. They don't come into play until a later ballot. Can you imagine, though, a contested convention between two people who aren't Democrats? Bernie Sanders is not a Democrat.
He's a socialist.
He's an independent, technically, in the Senate, but he's a Democratic socialist. Michael Bloomberg, sure, I guess now is, but a few years ago he was supporting a lot of Republicans. I am not one of these hair on fire, the world is falling Democrats, but that is a crazy scenario to envision.
Dave, can the Democratic Party tolerate a fixed convention where they take it from Bernie for fear that he will lose 49 states to Trump?
Well, I don't believe that he would lose 49 states at all. But listen, remember when the RNC was flirting with the idea of changing the rules to take the nomination away from Trump?
Yes.
And they had to face the realization that there would, as Trump said, there'll be riots in the streets. And he wasn't wrong. And this is the same thing with Bernie Sanders. They, at this point, have no other choice than to try to coalesce around Bernie Sanders.
Will Bernie's lefties riot for him?
Yeah, I think they will. They're like the Google.
Are you being serious now?
Yeah, I'm telling you, I never knew Bernie had, and he came on the show too. And that was a great Bernie impression.
Oh, thank
you. Will
you
you do that on my radio
yes,
show?
Yes, I will. Yes, I will.
He's a pathological liar. He's a liar. There's something I love about Bernie.
Too.
No, I love the
Look,
guy.
there's a picture. I hate to say this on national television, but I have to admit it. There's a picture out there of Bernie kissing me.
Well, I don't know why we don't have that.
But I got the first thing, what I saw yesterday, I got to tell you, he looked like the Mafia Don. Yes, he commanded respect and was the center of that debate last night. And I've never seen that before.
What do the rules say in Milwaukee? Can they just horse trade on the floor? Can superdelegates vote as a block like they did for Mrs. Clinton?
She also got more votes, Judge.
All right.
She got more real votes from voters. Superdelegates don't come into play, I think, until the third ballot. We have to get through a bunch of ballots first when there is horse trading going on at the state level, and each state allocates their delegates a little differently. Remember Iowa? It wasn't that long ago. What a mess that was. One candidate won more votes. One candidate won more delegates. I'm worried that Nevada's not going to go very well. But look, to your point about Bernie's our Trump, and there were crazy Republican debates in 2016 where they did this to each other, and their candidate won. And there was talk about a contested convention, and that didn't happen, and it worked out for Republicans in the end.
Dave,
so
do the Democrats
need to calm down a little.
Do the Democrats believe that there are states besides Vermont where Bernie can beat Donald Trump?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Bernie Sanders would win New York. He will win a lot of the traditional. But I will say, I think Bernie Sanders is Trump's toughest match at this point. I think that Bernie Sanders is more likely to pull in the moderate Democrats than Mike Bloomberg is to pull in the woke Democrats.
But don't the Democrats need Joe Sixpack from Western Pennsylvania and Ohio and Michigan and Wisconsin? I know I'm going to get in trouble, and even Indiana.
They do.
Can Joe Sixpack vote for Bernie?
Yeah, I'll tell you, he can't. They won't, and that's why I really think the president, no matter who they throw at him, is going to win in a landslide. I'm telling you right now. But to your point, Bernie's going to give I'll tell you, he's going to have a heck of a run, and he's going to have all the young votes, and we're going to be surprised at it. But I really don't think that people in Wisconsin, Michigan, and in Pennsylvania are going to vote for Bernie Sanders. There's no way. But I'm telling you, I bet you Bernie gets this nomination.
All right.
There's the prediction right there.
The panel returns later. But first, Roger Stone, today learning his fate at his sentencing hearing in Washington, D.C. But should he get a retrial? Or should the president pardon him before he even sets foot in a prison cell? Criminal defense attorney David Schoen, who watched every inch of that trial, breaks it down for us next. This morning, Roger Stone was sentenced to over 3 years in prison for convictions stemming from the Mueller investigation. But his prosecution, and as Stone would say, persecution, has deeper roots. Roger is a gifted political consultant known for going the distance for his clients, including such marquee names as Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, and Donald Trump. His expertise is the lawful destruction of the opposition candidacy, what is known in the trade as opposition research. In that process, Stone has made many enemies, some of whom have sought to destroy him. That process of destruction began a year ago when he was ordered out of the bedroom that he shared with his wife and out of their home together at 5:30 in the morning by no less than 23 federal agents carrying assault weapons. Behind his home on a canal in Fort Lauderdale was a government boat filled with federal agents, and above his home a government helicopter also filled with feds. Oh, and all of this was captured in real time by CNN, which the feds had unlawfully tipped off about their very expensive raid. Notwithstanding the armada that was sent to fetch Stone, the Florida federal judge before whom he appeared, who noted that a phone call to Stone's lawyers could have produced him, released Stone without requiring him to post any bail. He was later indicted and convicted of lying to Congress, intimidating a witness by threatening to kill the witness's cat, and obstruction of justice. The prosecutors in his case recommended that he serve a 7 to 9 year sentence. President Trump tweeted very harsh criticism of that recommendation and the personnel that produced it. And when Attorney General William Barr made it known that he would offer to the trial judge a different and lesser recommendation, the 4 prosecutors who tried the case resigned. The same day that the prosecutors resigned, the foreperson of the jury, herself a lawyer, outed herself as a stalwart opponent of all things Trump, with 2 negative references in her tweets to Roger Stone. All this has created an enormous headache for the trial judge, but of course the judiciary has tools with which to address it. This judge needs to do what she hasn't done yet: call Stone's lawyers and the resigned prosecutors into the courtroom, along with this former jury foreperson. She should interrogate the foreperson. Why didn't you tell us of your antipathy to Trump? Don't you know that as a lawyer, even an accurate answer can be misleading when it's not complete and frustrate a criminal trial? Were you truly a neutral juror? And to those resigned prosecutors, hey, why did you guys step down from the case before it was over? Oh, and did you know of the foreperson's prejudices? Would you want a juror on one of your cases who felt about the prosecution the same way this juror felt about Trump and Stone and their colleagues? Stone continues to maintain his innocence, now even more so, knowing that he was tried unfairly. And of course, he is entitled to a new trial, no matter what the jury found in the original one. Why? Because it is better that 1,000 guilty persons go free than 1 person be unfairly punished. Because the history of human freedom is the history of paying careful attention to procedure. Because in America, we only punish those who were fairly convicted. And because politics and bias have no moral or lawful place in American criminal prosecutions. Earlier today, the president weighed in on whether he'll get personally involved in Stone's case.
I want to address today's sentencing of a man, Roger Stone. Roger Stone. He's become a big part of the news over the last little while, and I'm following this very closely, and I want to see it play out to its fullest because Roger has a very good chance of exoneration, in my opinion. I'm going to watch the process. I'm going to watch it very closely, and at some point I'll make a determination. But Roger Stone and everybody has to be treated fairly, and this has not been a fair process.
As for some protesters outside the courthouse, well, they had a different idea. Gee, where have we heard that before? Lock him up. Joining me now is criminal defense attorney and civil rights attorney who followed every inch of this case, David Schoen. David, welcome here. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you very much.
Did Roger Stone get a fair trial?
No, he didn't. The president was exactly right in what he said, and you beautifully said a great deal about the case in your monologue. He didn't get a fair trial from the start, frankly. I think the public needs to know how checkered this was from the start. One of the prosecutors who got the indictment in this case, Jeannie Rhee, was Hillary Clinton's personal lawyer in her email scandal. Roger Stone's case is about trying to get opposition research on Hillary Clinton's emails. It's outrageous.
What is your take on the jury foreperson? You heard my take. This is per se an indicator of a new trial, because the Supreme Court has said, while we're not entitled to perfect jurors, we are entitled to indifferent jurors. By the way, we're entitled to a judge who is indifferent as to the outcome. Did Stone have an indifferent juror in the foreperson, and did Stone have an indifferent trial judge, David?
A second part first. No, the judge was very angry today and had been all along. She politicized this process while disclaiming any politicization of the process today in her sentencing. She spoke about Republicans this, Republicans that. She said that Roger Stone didn't do this to support the president. She did this to cover up for the president. She tried to do today, and the president should be livid about this, she tried to do today what the special counsel Mueller-Weissman team couldn't do, and that is find evidence of the wrongdoing by the president. But as to the juror, it's a very serious issue, and you're right. The integrity of the process is paramount. This juror, we now know, was tweeting before the trial, during and after the trial now, about issues that are all political, very anti-Trump, seems to be a real activist. But think about this. They did juror questionnaires in this case, called all the jurors in, had them fill out questionnaires in September. 2.5 weeks earlier, we now know that she was tweeting about the white supremacist rally in Charlottesville, linking it to MAGA and asking if they're going to take a stand. Why wasn't that revealed, or was it revealed? 2 months after that, they had voir dire of the jurors. Why wasn't any of this activism exposed? It should have been.
In New Jersey, where I sat as a trial judge, and as you know, in the federal system, the judge actually picks the jurors. I was always a little leery of a person on the jury that really, really, really wanted to be on the case. It's almost as if they wanted to produce a predetermined outcome. But I have never seen this in a juror, David, that is also a lawyer, a trained, licensed lawyer who understands how the system is supposed to work. And that's what we had here.
Right, and I think, as you pointed out, this is a lawyer who knew she wanted to be on the jury to stick it to Roger Stone, in all likelihood. Here's what I think the defense has to do now. They've filed a motion under seal already about the juror misconduct, but it has to be multifaceted. The problems here are potentially deception by the juror. These are all separately actionable and separately conceptual. Failure to follow instructions, extraneous influence. With all of these posts, was she getting responded to? Was she interacting with other people? This is a basis for a hearing. There should be juror interviews of all of the jurors to see how badly this infected this case.
I think you're right. But I don't think this trial judge is going to do it, because I think she's as biased as the juror was. David, it's a pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Former National Security Advisor John Bolton now weighing in on whether his testimony would have changed the results of the impeachment trial. So does he think he would have helped or hurt the president? Plus, the New York Times getting slammed for, you're not going to believe this, printing an op-ed from none other than the second in command of the Taliban. Why would the old gray lady, just a couple blocks from here, give a soapbox to terrorists? Oh, the panel is ready to tackle that one next. John Bolton, the former National Security Advisor and Colonel Sanders impersonator, that's for you, Piscopo, came under fire last night over his refusal to testify in President Trump's impeachment trial. Bolton shared a stage at Vanderbilt University with, of all people, one of his predecessors, former National Security Advisor under President Obama, Susan Rice. Rice said to Bolton, quote, "I can't imagine withholding my testimony with or without a subpoena. I would feel like I was shamefully violating the oath that I took to defend the Constitution against all enemies, domestic and foreign." Wow. Meanwhile, Bolton refused to give any more details about his book, but said that it won't come out, it won't change the outcome, or it would change the outcome of the impeachment anyway. So is Bolton having the worst book tour ever? Or does this stuff work? The panel is back. Marie Harf, Dave Smith, Joe Piscopo. Is Susan Rice for real? She would have testified against Barack Obama?
I think it is pretty insane that John Bolton has things in the book that were pertinent to impeachment and did not voluntarily come testify before Congress. He is hawking this book. He's going to make money off of it. And he's like, I have the goods, but I wouldn't do it when it really mattered. I don't know what Susan would have done. But John Bolton, it's not a good look for him.
Did you agree with the vote in the Senate of 51 to 49 to bar him from testifying? Or should they have let him go in the well of the Senate with the president sitting in the front row and testify?
I'm conflicted because John Bolton's the perfect radio guest. He was so great. He was a landline.
Because you don't have to look at that mustache.
You didn't have to address the mustache directly. So, and he was so lucid when you would talk to him in interviews. But he's selling a book. Everybody's got to settle down. It's all about the book. And there was no way he should have testified.
There was nothing.
It shouldn't be all about the book.
There's nothing John Bolton believes that you and I believe with respect to foreign policy.
That's for sure.
But if he was present at the creation of some unlawful activity that the president was trying to perpetrate on the government of Ukraine, shouldn't the Senate have heard from him?
Sure, you could make that argument. I don't know that he actually said that in the book. It's
well,
not.
We don't know what he said.
Well, there were some excerpts, but they were kind of vague. But to hear Susan Rice talking about the constitutional duties, and you're right. I mean, Obama only put American citizens on murder lists without, being charged of anything. And
which she approved.
Yes, which she approved of. I mean, it's like this idea. I mean, it must make you feel the same way. The idea that they invoke the Constitution when convenient.
Didn't she even out some people that had been spied upon by the Obama administration around the time that Trump got elected?
Look, I know there's lots of conspiracy theories about what Susan Rice did or did not do. I think that she was a very good national security advisor. You may disagree with some of the policies that were not libertarian-leaning.
Should Bolton have testified?
Absolutely, without question.
But it was hearsay. It was a book. It was
He was
hearsay.
there.
It wasn't anything chronicled or anything legitimate. It was from a book. And, they said that? We think John Bolton said that? Bring him in. It had to stop at some point.
I don't know how they can publish the book because his former colleagues in the National Security Council have not even approved of the book yet.
It was a book based on notes he took of meetings he was in and conversations he had with the president. It may not have changed the Senate outcome. He's right about that. The American people should have heard.
Joey,
Joe
what is
Piscopo
this?
has dessert over here, by the way. I'm talking about the Constitution.
Crazy here.
There's
So I
cannoli
apologize.
over here.
Going from the Constitution
you
to
on
cannoli.
TV all day, and I worry about you because we've known each other since elementary
I look
school.
undernourished?
Forgive me, I'm sorry. And no. So the last time I bought a cannoli, it became a thing. It went like viral. I gave the judge a cannoli. It wasn't a great cannoli.
It tasted like cannolis. It tasted like cardboard.
See, and I felt so guilty. From Michael's of Brooklyn. Look at this. It's a piece of artwork from the Michael from Michael's of Brooklyn. It's for you to have this best cannoli. And you've been on TV all day. Watch this.
I don't eat sugar. I don't eat gluten.
Yes. Isn't that great, though, huh?
You didn't see that.
Did I redeem myself?
Yes, you have. President Trump.
More news about Afghanistan now.
President Trump has long called media outlets like the New York Times, quote, the enemy of the people. Joey, we did the cannoli thing too early. You're supposed to do it after the Times.
I know. My fault.
And has protested this characterization if it is not helping his case by giving column space to the literal enemy of the people. This morning, the Times published an opinion piece written by deputy leader of the Taliban, a man currently wanted by the United States government and responsible for many Afghani civilian and American military deaths. The op-ed included the rationale for the Taliban's actions in Afghanistan, their demands for the U.S. government, and portraits of the terrorist group as a civic-minded peace seekers. So is this op-ed fit to print, or is it aiding the enemy? It's absolutely fit to print, Dave.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And I don't, this is newsworthy. This is very important. I mean, we're engaged in a conflict that's something like 6 times as long as our involvement in World War II at this point. Pretty much everybody knows there's no military solution here. And I think it's good to know what the Taliban, by the way, the Taliban, I'm not apologizing for them, but they're only the enemy of the American people because we decided nation building was going to be our path.
Aren't we now negotiating with the Taliban? Yeah. And don't we have a sort of initialed agreement with them? And aren't we undergoing a ceasefire?
Yes, and I have told you this, Judge. You have made me on this issue. Look, I'm a hawk on many things, but on the Afghanistan war, I've become much more like you on this.
You've been hanging around with me.
I've been hanging around with you too much. It's the longest war.
Get any ideas?
It's the longest war in American history. And you don't negotiate with your friends, you negotiate with your enemies. And I don't trust the Taliban farther than I can throw them. But the reason we went there after 9/11 to take on Al-Qaeda, we did that.
History.
History.
Are your listeners furious at the New York Times for publishing an op-ed like this.
Leave the gun, take the cannoli.
Way to bring it back around.
Thank you, Don Cheech.
I guarantee we go on the air tomorrow, AM 970, The Answer, with Frankie Five Boroughs and the crew. I'm telling you what, there's no way the New York Times should allow this to be written.
But don't you believe in the freedom of speech?
No, not like that. The New York Times, to me, is anti-American anymore. There, I said it, okay? Ooh. It's like, oh, please, they go out, they're going to take somebody from the Taliban to write.
Even if what he says is true, they have the right to be anti-American in print.
Yes, they have.
Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech.
But you can't. You're taking an enemy, and you're giving. It's like Tokyo Rose in the World War II writing something.
Are there lefties that hate the New York Times for publishing stuff like this?
I don't think so. It's like doing a TV interview with Assad or with, Putin or anyone who's in. I mean, it's an interview. It is newsworthy.
Didn't Secretary of Defense
useful.
Esper just have pictures of himself shaking hands with the head of the Taliban after they finished some negotiation?
I don't know who it was, but we are negotiating with the Taliban because we are not. This is not. There's not a military solution.
The New York Times wouldn't allow Donald Trump to write an op-ed. I mean, it was just a shot at the administration.
Paper. It's their ink.
It's newsworthy.
It's their cannolis. Thank you, panel.
We better all get cannolis.
Yeah, there's 2 dozen of them there. By the way,
thank you, Michaels of Brooklyn.
This is the best cannoli I ever had.
Thank you.
It's not the cardboard you gave me last time.
Love to your mom.
I love you too. My mother's watching. Marie, Dave, and Joe, thank you very much. The not-so-friendly fire between Bloomberg and Bernie threatening to blow up the Democratic race. So who landed the most punches in the debate? The capitalist or the socialist? That's next. You may have thought we settled this with the fall of the Berlin Wall, but last night's Democratic debate reignited the ideological battle between capitalism and socialism, with Mike Bloomberg and Bernie Sanders each carrying their respective banners and exemplifying the divide in the party. Take a look.
We're not going to throw out capitalism. We tried that. Other countries tried that. It was called communism, and it just didn't work.
Let's talk about democratic socialism, not communism, Mr. Bloomberg. That's a cheap shot.
The best-known socialist in the country happens to be a millionaire with 3 houses. What'd I miss here?
Well, you'll miss that I work in Washington, House 1.
That's the first problem.
Live in Burlington, House 2.
That's good.
And like thousands of other Vermonters, I do have a summer camp. Forgive me for that. Where is your home? Which tax haven do you have your home?
New York City, thank you very much, and I pay all my taxes.
You know what, Mr. Bloomberg? It wasn't you who made all that money. Maybe your workers played some role in that as well.
Whew. So who owns the soul of the Democrat Party, the billionaire or the Bolshevik? Joining me now is my dear friend, president of the Mises Institute and former chief of staff to Congressman Ron Paul, Jeff Deist. Jeff, welcome here. So was Bernie essentially right when he said America has become a socialist country? You know I was going to ask you that.
He's not entirely wrong, Judge. Let's face it, the Overton window has shifted a little bit. Socialism is not a dirty word on the left. It doesn't scare young people, especially. A lot of young people in this country, when they hear socialism, they think of Denmark or Sweden or something like that. They don't think of Nazi Germany. They don't think of the Soviet Union. They don't think of communist China. So I think Bernie's right. I think in 2016, maybe Bernie was an outlier in his own party. In 2020, I think he's right there in the center, and maybe Bloomberg's the outlier.
But can Bernie actually make the argument that wealth should be redistributed or assets should be owned in common? And isn't such an argument so antithetical to American values that the majority of the country would reject it out of hand? I know I sound like Bloomberg last night, but I think he made sense when he said that.
Well, I'd like to think so. I mean, socialism is an incremental thing. We have all kinds of semi-socialism in the United States. All kinds of things are mostly owned and operated by the government. I mean, there's whole industries like banking and medicine and law and education, which are entirely wound up with government. So, you know, it's not something that the American people are scared of anymore. But I do hope that what comes across in these Democratic debates is that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, for example, they hate business in their DNA. Capitalism to them is anathema, whereas Bloomberg, he doesn't hate it. He's a business guy. He understands what it took to become a wealthy person from nothing. So there is a difference there, and I don't want to poo-pah it, but I do think that Bernie Sanders is not an outlier. I think your average Democratic voter is quite open to nationalizing or socializing entire industries. And I think that people like you and I have to view this really as a failure of sorts. I mean, we have failed intellectually, ideologically with our young people. The whole bulwark of conservatism, Inc., and to a lesser extent libertarianism, has failed to make the case that history and theory and book after book have proven time and time again, which is that socialism doesn't work. But some people are still buying it.
If you take, we only have about 45 seconds, Jeff. If you take the wealth transfer away from Bernie, doesn't he have a lot of views with which libertarians agree, like war and peace and what you can do with your body and surveillance and civil liberties?
Well, supposedly he does. He doesn't seem like a civil libertarian when it comes to the police. He also apparently, by some accounts, cleaned up New York City quite a bit, so it depends on your perspective. But look, I want an anti-war candidate. I want to hear him talk about getting out of the Middle East. When he says that, maybe I'll believe him. Trump said the same thing.
Okay. Jeff Deist, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us. All right. Why a former FBI agent is calling the Bureau a threat to democracy, and how you could be helping the government to track and record all of your movements 24/7 without even knowing it. That's next. In just a few decades, America has transformed from the land of the free to a total surveillance state. And among the most effective tools of tyranny is your cell phone, a unique device identifier, as well as signals sent from your cell phone to cell towers 24/7, are creating a perfect record of your movements for the government to dig into almost any time it pleases, thanks to Section 215 of the Patriot Act, which lets the government do this without a warrant from a judge. All of this is light years beyond what our founding fathers could possibly have imagined, and still way outside the bounds of the Bill of Rights they wrote to protect us. So why are we letting it happen, and how can we stop it? Let's bring in Mike German. He's a former special agent of the FBI, a Brennan Justice Center for Justice and Liberty National Security Fellow, and author of the terrific book, get this title, from a former FBI agent, Disrupt, Discredit, and Divide, How the New FBI Damages Democracy. Mike, it's a pleasure. Welcome here.
Thanks for having me.
I'm holding up my iPhone. Almost everybody has one of these in some form or another, no matter who the manufacturer is. How does the government know where this is, and thus where I am at any given moment, at any time of day?
So your cell phone, in order to work, in order to receive a call, has to be constantly in communication with a cell phone tower. And that cell phone tower keeps records that are governed under a different standard than if those records about you were kept in your desk. And so those records are covered under what's called a third-party doctrine, which gives the government much easier access to those records. So because that is being kept constantly every time you move about, that's easy to obtain.
So
there's also a lot of...
Can the FBI or can local police just knock on the door of the owner of the cell tower and demand and receive those records without going to a judge and demonstrating probable cause and getting a search warrant, as the Constitution requires?
So the technology has moved faster than the law. The law is just starting to catch up. But they have traditionally been able to get that with what's called a D order, which is a court order, but it's lower than probable cause. It requires only reasonable indication that the evidence is relevant to an ongoing investigation. So it's a much lower standard. But there are also cell tower dumps that are done, again, with much lower standard than probable cause. So it's not what we are normally used to as a Fourth Amendment probable cause warrant. It's a much lower standard of information that gives the government much broader authority to collect records in bulk. They also use something called a stingray, which for years, they tried to hide that they were using this device, and basically it mimics a cell tower. So even though it's a suitcase-sized device that the agency controls, your phone thinks it's a cell tower, so will communicate with it. And with that, they're able to collect records of everybody who is in the region when it's on.
So we've gone from being colonists who are victimized by a foreign government issuing general warrants to Americans who elect a government that does the same thing to us.
Exactly, and when we have a government agency that's powerful enough to know much more about the citizenry than the citizens know about what that government is doing with the information it collects, that's when democracy is at risk.
Are there other FBI agents that think about this the way you do?
Sure, there are, and you know, unfortunately, I think there over time has been a move to push out people who complain internally.
Got it. Got it. Mike, you're a courageous guy. I hope a lot of people buy and read your book. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be right back. Thanks for watching the show tonight. You can follow Kennedy on Twitter and Instagram at Kennedy Nation, on Facebook, Kennedy FBN, and email Kennedy at kennedyfbn@foxbusiness.com. You can catch my show, Liberty File, exclusively on Fox Nation. Watch it at foxnation.com. What a pleasure it was trying to fill her shoes. From New York, defending freedom for the great Kennedy. Good night, America.